Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Raeshad from RaeshadBeats.com. Welcome back to another video, and today we have another album review. Now, the artist of the hour for this album review is none other than KPW. KPW is an artist and producer and poet from Twin Cities, Minnesota. He is also a good friend of my last client and my last artist that I reviewed, Elliot. And if you remember last time I reviewed his album, Prodigal Son. And the album that we are reviewing today is third album, titled Black the Default. Now, in Black the Default, you're going to be getting a lot of concepts on racism, self-hatred, the resilience of Black America. You're just going to be getting a lot of concepts on Black consciousness, you know what I'm saying? Just being conscious, which is always a good concept to listen to, which is always a good concept to, pay attention to and try to sort out the themes and sort out, the issues, which is a really big topic relevantly. What you'll be getting in this album is just a lot of sample-based instrumentals and hard-hitting themes that are very relevant for today. Now, as soon as you start this record, the first track that you get is The Driven Youth, featuring The Driven Youth. I still don't know who The Driven Youth is on this track. However, it starts off with this very nice chopped up beat, this very nice loop sample, just, moving fluently, and it's very nice to listen to. You just think, okay, it starts off and it has like this hard-hitting sample. There's no percussion in it. It's just really a sample loop. It draws, I think the problem that I really have with this intro is that it draws out too long. You know what I'm saying? Because like the loop is dope. It gets a little bit just tiresome towards the end because, you know what I'm saying, after you hear the loops, you gotta hear like the skit that's popping in. So you'll hear like a skit popping in. And I don't know who it is that's talking, but you'll hear just somebody talking, kind of like an interview or somebody just speaking their mind. As you get deeper into the intro, that's when you start to hear KPW spit. Now, when he comes onto this record, he comes on spastic, very, very charismatic. He came at this intro strong. And that was one of the biggest things that I liked about this intro is the heart that he had with this track. Like just starting the track off, you can hear the passion, you can hear the emphasis. Because I feel like a big thing that he does is emphasis. He has a lot of emphasis on his words, which is actually a good thing for his type of style of rapping. The track that you get right after the intro is No PTI, which I feel like is a good transition from the intro because what you get right after is just straight up hip hop bars, you know what I mean? And you got like this nice little sample loop with some regular percussion. I think the beat was pretty cool for this one because really, I feel like the beats that he make is really just made for listening purposes. Like it forces you to listen to the verses. I feel like No PTI was a good transition from the intro because the intro to me is just kind of drawn out, but the intro didn't really have enough hard hittingness to really hit it like an intro. It didn't open the album up enough for me. So with that being said, No PTI is a good, refreshing track to kind of, bring up, to kind of, ease back into the track list. So No PTI, I liked it. Great lyrics. I love the beat. The beat is dope. I like the sample chops in it, and I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. You know what I mean? It's a really good track. And it's a good way to kind of pick up the slack where the intro left off. Now, number 3, you got Beset Banger. Now, Beset Banger, I like this track because of the concept. Like, it starts off with, I guess it's a friend of KPW, I'm not sure, but it starts off with a dude who's talking. He's like, hey man, that song is nice, but I need something that I could turn up to, man. You know what I mean? Like, and I could relate to that because, I had friends who always like my trap stuff, but whenever I send them some different stuff, I'll send them like boom bap or whatever, they'll be like, yo, this joint is tough, but I need some turn up, you know what I mean? So, I know how that feels, but I digress. Beset Banger is a great track, and it was actually also a single leading up to this album. It's one of the first singles. I'm not sure it's the first, but it's one of the singles that lead up to this album. The beat was definitely dope, but the thing is with Beset Banger that kind of threw me off, it really was just a straight up. It was a banger, but it wasn't the banger that I was expecting. And I wasn't expecting like some crazy track because that's not what KPW is about. He's all about poetry. He's all about sample looping and boom bap. He's a conscious rapper, you know what I mean? But but the word Beset Banger, it kind of threw me off. Regardless of that, the track was definitely dope and the concept behind it was definitely dope. He said in the beginning of the in the beginning of the Beset Banger, he was like, I met Angela Bassett when I was 3. And I'm not sure if he did or not, but that's dope, you know what I'm saying? I would love to be Angela Bassett. But It was a good track. I enjoyed it. I felt like it definitely had a lot of his characteristics, and every bit of his style and his charisma played a good part in this track. But one thing I didn't like about this track was the close, like towards the ending. Towards the ending is where he starts looping this part where he was like, I can hear Sambo screaming or something, like that's the Shine sample. Pretty much he was mimicking those people who were making fun of the beat, saying, oh, I heard that from somewhere, I heard that sample from somewhere. And I liked it, but it got a little bit tiresome because the way he kept looping it, I didn't like it. It was just getting tiresome towards the end. But other than that, I like how he also brought in like this ad-libs where it's like sick of me, sick of me, sick of me, sick of me. And it would just kind of tremolo back and forth, and it would actually fade in and then fade back out with the track. I really enjoyed it. That was dope. Now, further down the track list, Verge. I enjoy Verge because it has this smoky sample. And in Verge, he's talking a lot about age and the coming of age and how, you know, some people will never grow up no matter how old they get. You know what I mean? And how it can be, how sometimes that can be a good thing, how sometimes that can be a bad thing. So Verge was really a big topic on age. I enjoy Verge just because of the concept and the beat and the lyrics on this one. His lyrics were, you know, exactly how I imagined them on this track, you know what I'm saying? Very there. And there was actually, he even snuck some poetry into this track as well. And I like how he does that. In certain tracks on this album, he sneaks in poetry maybe towards the beginning, maybe towards the end, maybe even in the middle. It's one of his big specialties to me because I feel like that actually connects with the listener because it throws them off. They're not just getting a regular rap track. They're going to get some poetry here and there, and they're going to get some, you know, spoken word. Now, number 5, which I feel like this is an interlude because there's no vocals. It was just a beautiful sample. Now, number 5, Organized Tragedy. Such a beautiful opening. The sample is very smoky and it's beautiful though. I gotta ask KPW what sample that is because I have to listen to it. Like I feel like it's just gonna help me. But I digress from that. But the sample in this joint is just beautiful. It starts off with these beautiful pianos, but then you kind of hear where the chop comes to an end, and then he brings it back and then loops it. It was a really good interlude because it leads right into the next track, which is OSFJ, I'm sorry. It was leading to the next track, OSFJ, which stands for Over Some Fucking Jordans. Oh, give me a second. Organized Tragedy is just beautiful. It leads right into the next track, OSJF. OSFJ, I'm sorry. It leads right into the track OSFJ. And OSFJ stands for Over Some Fucking Jordans. Now, before I go into the next track, understand that Organized Tragedy is pretty much the interlude into that track because there's actually, you can hear some vocals towards the end. You can hear like somebody talking towards the end, talking about how people were lining up for new shoes, new Jordans, how traffic was held up at the mall, how it was just so many people at the mall, and you know, there was just a lot of issues going around because new Jordans were out there. You know, everybody was out there. The genius with that track was, you know, because I didn't know what to expect in Organized Tragedy. I just thought it was just a display of his sampling. But really, it leaded into OSFJ, fuck. And so then you got OSFJ, which stands for Over Some Fucking Jordans. Now, this track, this actually was another single leading up to this album. OSFJ simply is just a dope track because the concept of materialism, you know what I'm saying, the long history of, you know, black people and materialism. He was just pretty much explaining how he was once in their shoes, you know what I'm saying, just watching how everybody got all these Jordans and he fiended for them. He loved those, you know what I'm saying? He loved the Jordans, but he wanted them so bad that he came out with his own money to get them. You know what I mean? But as he got older, he started to realize that it just, you know, it didn't make sense to him anymore. So he starts to depict the story where, you know, pretty much putting his own story in place where a kid was not really a kid, but it could be a grown man, it don't matter. But he was just pretty much putting in his own words how these Jordans can get you killed, you know what I mean? How you can have these joints on your feet and somebody will rob you. And I'm from the DMV area, and personally, that shit is a big disease where I'm from. You know what I'm saying? It's a culture of getting your Jordans took from where I'm from. So I could really relate to that. That's why OSFJ is just one of my favorite tracks on this thing because I can deeply relate to it on a personal stance. Now, what comes right after OSFJ, Hustlin' Metrics. Hustlin' Metrics is my favorite track on this entire jump, simply because it was straight up straight up hip hop, period. It was just hip hop. It was straight up hip hop. And in this joint, you got the poetry in the beginning, where in the intro you have KPW like doing a little short poetry in the beginning just to kind of lead up to the track, and he was talking about how a man's hustle and a man's work is a reflection of his determination and his reverence and his value, you know what I mean? And it was dope. So then you have Mike Dreams, who's a feature on this track. Mike Dreams is a feature on this track, and he leaves an amazing verse. He leaves an amazing verse on this track, man. He killed it. He just broke down how hustling was just applied to everyday life. It was amazing. This is one of my favorite tracks. Every time I listen to this joint, I go back to number 7 first. I don't even start with the intro. I'll go to number 7, and then I go back to the intro, go down the bottom again. Hustling Metrics, definitely one of my favorite tracks, because the beat was just, and the instrumentation on this joint was dope, man. The way the sample was set up, it was just going up and up every time in the sample, and it just made it that much more, it just made it that much more dramatic in that feel, which is definitely perfect for a track like this, you know what I mean? And I just like how Mike Dream started off like, every day I'm hustling, like that joint is cold. It's a cold track. Now, as you go further down the track list, you start to hear a lot more concepts of police brutality, which is a big thing now, which is a really huge thing in relevance of today's world in America, which is, you know what I'm saying, everybody knows the situation with police brutality. I won't get into that because this is an album review. However, a lot of the concepts in these tracks coming down is just really breaking down police brutality and how no matter who you are, you can be next. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can be an upstanding citizen just trying to make it your way home, and you can be chalked down. But let's get right into the tracks. So right after Hustle Metrics, you got Wi-Fi, which is wielding authority for illumination. And in Wi-Fi, it's pretty much depicting the cops as a robot. They're depicting the cops as, you know, the bad guys. Like, they have like this robotic filter on the vocals, and it just sounds very, very eerie and dark. And the background sounds and the instrument was just, you know, it just set the mood, like, oh my god, like, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like a movie the way it was starting. Now, Quota for the Casualties is pretty much, the way Wi-Fi is set up, it's set up kind of like how Organized Tragedy is set up for fucking Jordans. The imagery on this entire track right here is just really great. You can feel and you can picture everything. Especially if you have been in a situation like this before, you can definitely feel it, you can relate to it. My favorite part about this track is where he busts out the poetry once again, because remember I told you he structures it, poetry right here, poetry there sometimes. In different tracks, he'll take it maybe in the middle, maybe in the beginning, maybe at the end. Now, he does poetry at the end, and at the end he just pretty much talks about how he had his friends behind him, he was driving, police is about to pull up, police is about to pull him over, he's like, okay, cool, I'm about to stop. And then police fire off on him. You know what I mean? So it was, you have to listen to it for yourself, because I'm not going to spoil it for you, but the poetry at the end is just groundbreakingly dope. I enjoyed it because it sealed the entire track off. I enjoyed that track a lot. Not only is it relevant to what's going on around today, it's something that we know everybody needs to pay attention to. But I digress, this is not a news channel, this is an album review. That was number 9, Quota for the Casualties. Pretty much one of the things that I noticed KPW likes to do in his tracks, he likes to have a lot of the samples run for a little bit, so it kind of draws it out a little bit just for the tracks, but it kind of sets it up for just like a perfect drop. Not even a drop like a bass drop, but it just sets it up for a perfect drop of him about to rap or him about to break out some poetry. So it's like, it's a patience thing. You gotta be patient for him to kind of like tune the track in and kind of fill out for the track and let the track, you know, it makes your imagination run wild while he does that. It's perfect that way because I kind of want to imagine what he's about to talk about next, even though his concepts in this album are pretty much all the same. But yeah, man, like, one of the biggest things that I loved about this album was just the smokiness. I love the instrumentation of this joint, man. I feel like a lot of these samples are really good, and even though it kind of seems just like, you know, just regular sample chops, I feel like it plays a big role in KPW's style, even though, you know, of course it has to because he produced it himself, but it plays a big role in just the concept, you know what I mean? It takes you back, because when you sample something, it naturally takes you back, like especially if you know the sample. The way he sets it up is perfect that way. Now a couple of tracks towards the end, like Random Number Niles, I liked it. It was straight up hip hop. I didn't enjoy it too much because I didn't understand the concept too much in this track, so I didn't really have a good feel for it. So to conclude this album review, man, I feel like KPW, his style is definitely dope. I love his lyrics. I love his instrumentals. And I like how he makes his instrumentals very simple. It could just be like a small chop, maybe with just a kick and a snare, and it just make a whole much of a difference, you know what I mean? Hustle Metrics is my favorite track on this joint. But one thing I felt like that needed to be fixed on this particular project was just the sonics. Like, there are some tracks that you can hear his voice nice and clear, and there were other tracks where you could tell his vocals weren't really mixed or mastered properly. And you know, that's a big thing with me because I'm an engineer and I hear it, I know when to hear it, so it's just like, okay, you know what I'm saying? But there's certain tracks like Hustle Metrics, you can hear him nice and clear, and you can hear Mike Dreams nice and clear. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the whole project needs to have that basic cohesive sonic. But other than that, Black the Default is definitely a dope, solid project. I feel like there's a lot of concepts that really tie into what happened in 2015 with, you know, all the police brutality and things that were happening around that time, which is still leading up into 2016 as we speak. A lot of people can relate to this album simply because of just the things that's going around it. And the concepts are really very solid and very straightforward and easy to understand. So with that being said, Black the Default is a definitely solid project. And if I was to rate this project, I definitely would give this project an 8. Because I feel like there was a lot of tracks on here relatable, and Hustle Metrics is my shit. Like, that's my shit. So with that being said, man, that's all I gotta say, man. Make sure y'all link up with KPW. His links in description, and Facebook and everything will be in description below. Everything will be in description, so make sure you follow him. And make sure you download Black the Default. It is up for free download. So make sure you go ahead and download that because it's not gonna cost you a penny, man. You better take advantage of that. That's all I gotta say, man. Raeshad Beats out. Peace. KPW, Black the Default, forever. See you guys in the next video. Peace.